The cafeteria buzzed with the noise of trays clattering and laughter echoing off the tiled walls. In the far corner, a little black girl sat at the edge of a long table, her lunchbox clutched tight to her chest. Her name was Amara. She was 7 years old, her hair braided neatly with yellow ribbons, and her small hands trembled as she opened the box. Inside was a simple peanut butter sandwich and an apple, both wrapped carefully in foil. Before she could take a bite, a group of children walked past her. One of them, wearing a brand new jacket, stopped and looked down at her lunch with a smirk. "That looks gross," he said loudly. Another snickered. "You should eat real food, not garbage." Amara's face flushed, but she stayed quiet. The boy reached out, grabbed her lunchbox, and before she could react, he tossed it into the trash can beside the table. The sound of the lid slamming shut echoed louder than all the laughter in the room. Amara froze. For a moment, the entire cafeteria blurred. Then, her voice broke through the noise, soft but trembling. "They threw my lunch in the trash again." Her words carried farther than she expected, slicing through the air until even the adults at the counter looked up. One of them started to step forward, but another shook her head. "It is not our business," she whispered. By the glass wall near the entrance, a tall man in a charcoal suit stopped mid-step. He had been walking through the school to check on a charity project, something about improving cafeteria meals for underprivileged students. His name was William Grant, billionaire investor, founder of the Grant Foundation, and a man who prided himself on solving problems with numbers, not feelings. Yet when he turned toward the sound of that tiny voice, the air seemed to shift. He saw her standing there, small and still, tears forming but not falling, her chin trembling as she stared at the trash can. The janitor walked over, confused, and started to lift the lid, but Amara shook her head. "Please, do not," she said softly. "My mom packed that. I do not want her to know they did it again." William's throat tightened. He did not understand why that sentence hurt the way it did. Something about the way she said "again" felt heavier than the marble floors beneath his feet. A teacher approached, placing a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder, but Amara stepped back, eyes fixed on the trash. William looked around the cafeteria. The laughter had died, replaced by a strange quiet. Even the clock seemed to tick slower. He walked closer, stopping a few feet away. Amara noticed him but did not move. She wiped her cheek quickly and tried to stand tall. Her small voice broke the silence once more. "It is okay. I can wait until dinner." And then she smiled, a small, brave smile that somehow hurt more than her tears. The billionaire stood frozen, his reflection caught in the glass wall beside her. For the first time in years, his logic failed him. The numbers did not fit. The air around them was heavy with something he could not name. Compassion, maybe, or shame. Outside, the winter light flickered through the glass, catching the faint shimmer of her ribbon as the cafeteria fell still, and the world seemed to hold its breath. William Grant remained near the glass wall long after the laughter faded. The cafeteria felt colder now, the metallic hum of the refrigerator filling the silence where voices had been. Amara stood beside the trash can, her fingers gripping the edge of her empty lunchbox. The janitor hesitated with the trash lid still lifted, unsure what to do. The teacher cleared her throat, her voice soft but firm. "Amara, sweetheart, go wash your hands. I will see what we can do." But the girl shook her head. "It is fine, Miss Harris. They did not mean it." Her words were calm, but her eyes betrayed her. William saw that, saw the quiet dignity that made her seem older than her 7 years. He took a small step forward, but one of the cafeteria supervisors intercepted him politely. "Sir, this area is for students only." William nodded, though his gaze did not move from the girl. "I understand," he said, his voice low, each word careful. "Just making sure everything is all right." The woman gave a rehearsed smile. "Kids will be kids," she said. "We teach resilience here." Resilience. The word hung in his mind like a cruel joke. He watched as Amara walked toward the sink, shoulders straight, her small frame trying to carry a weight no child should. When she finished rinsing her hands, she stood for a moment staring at her reflection in the stainless steel faucet. Then, she took a deep breath and walked out the side door, the one that led to the playground. The billionaire followed at a distance. Outside, the wind was sharp, scattering brown leaves across the asphalt. Amara sat alone on a bench, the empty lunchbox beside her. Her ribbons fluttered in the breeze. She unzipped her backpack and took out a small notebook, edges curled, the cover decorated with hand-drawn hearts and stars. She opened it and began to write, pressing the pencil hard against the paper. From where he stood, William could not read the words, but he saw her lips move silently, as if she were whispering the sentences to herself. "Dear Mama," she mouthed, "I tried to be brave again today." William felt his chest tighten. He had seen thousands of reports about poverty, hunger, and inequality, but never like this, never from 10 feet away. The wind carried a faint smell of disinfectant and wet grass, the scent of an ordinary school day, but everything about this moment felt extraordinary. He walked closer, his shoes crunching softly on the gravel. Amara noticed him and looked up, startled. She closed her notebook quickly, tucking it back into her bag. "Hello?" she said politely, her voice small but composed. "Are you lost, mister?" He smiled faintly. "No, I do not think so," he replied. "I am William. I was visiting the school today." She nodded, unsure why a man in a suit would be talking to her. "It is a nice school," she said carefully. Sometimes, her eyes drifted toward the cafeteria windows, then down to the ground. William crouched a few feet away so he would not tower over her. "I heard what happened in there," he said gently. "That was not right." Amara's hands tightened around her lunchbox. "It is all right," she whispered. "They do not like when someone brings food from home. They say it smells weird. My mom cooks beans and rice. She says it is healthy." William's throat tightened again. "Do the teachers know?" "Some do," she said. "They tell me to ignore it. Mama says the same. She says people who laugh are usually the ones who do not know kindness yet." William nodded slowly. "Your mother sounds wise," Amara smiled faintly. "She says I should always forgive first, even if they do not say sorry." Her voice cracked just a little at the end, like a string pulled too tight. The billionaire's gaze softened. He wanted to ask 100 questions about her life, her mother, why she was alone, but he stopped himself. Instead, he said, "You should not have to be that strong at your age." Amara tilted her head, curious. "You look sad, mister." He exhaled through his nose, almost laughing. "Maybe I am." The playground bell rang then, and the noise of children spilled out through the doors as recess began. Amara stood, brushing dust from her skirt. "I have to go back," she said. "Thank you for talking to me." She gave a polite nod and started walking toward the swings. William remained standing in the cold, his mind tangled in thoughts he could not organize. He watched as she joined a group of children, most of whom ignored her. She sat on the last swing, pushing herself gently back and forth, the metal chains creaking with each motion. Her face was calm, but her eyes looked far away. When a gust of wind blew, her ribbon came loose and fluttered to the ground. William bent down, picked it up, and called out, "You dropped this." She turned, surprised, and ran toward him, her shoes slapping softly against the pavement. "Thank you," she said, accepting the ribbon with both hands. "Mama made it." She said yellow means hope. She tied it back into her braid with small, careful fingers. William wanted to say something that could erase the pain of that cafeteria moment, but no words came. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small card embossed with gold letters. "If you ever need help," he said, handing it to her, "you can give this to your mom." She looked at it, reading the name slowly, Grant Foundation. Then she looked back up, her brow furrowed. "Are you the man who gives away food at Christmas?" William nodded, surprised she knew. "Sometimes," he said. "Mama said your company helped people in our neighborhood once," Amara said softly. "She said rich people do not always remember us, but you did." She said maybe you are different. William felt the words land heavy in his chest. "Maybe she was right," he said quietly. The bell rang again, calling the students back inside. Amara waved once, then ran toward the building, her braid bouncing behind her. William stood in the empty playground, the wind tugging at his coat. He looked down at the swing still swaying from her touch, and thought of the word she had used, hope. It had been a long time since he believed in it, but somehow, in that moment, he did. The next morning arrived gray and heavy with drizzle. William Grant could not stop thinking about the girl with the yellow ribbon. The memory of her voice and that quiet strength in her eyes had followed him through the night. Even in his glass-walled penthouse above the city, surrounded by success and silence, he felt the echo of her words. At breakfast, he stared at his untouched coffee while his assistant, Lauren, read through his schedule. You have the meeting with the education board at 10, a call with investors at noon, and the charity dinner tonight. William nodded absently. Cancel the morning meeting, he said. Lauren blinked. Sir, just do it, he replied, setting the cup down. We are going back to Rosewood Elementary. The rain had stopped by the time his car pulled into the school parking lot. The building looked smaller than he remembered. A patchwork of red bricks and faded paint. Children in bright coats hurried inside, clutching their lunches, their laughter spilling into the air. William stood near the entrance, feeling strangely out of place. He spotted Miss Harris, the teacher from yesterday, carrying a stack of folders. Good morning, he greeted politely. She looked startled but smiled. Mr. Grant, what a surprise. Are you here for the cafeteria inspection again? He hesitated, then said, You could say that. I wanted to ask about one of your students. Her name is Amara. Miss Harris's smile softened, though it dimmed slightly. Ah, yes. She is a sweet child. Quiet. A bit too grown for her age. Does she come from a difficult situation? William asked carefully. The teacher nodded. Her mother works nights cleaning offices downtown. She is raising Amara alone. They struggle, but that little girl never complains. Always says she is fine, even when she is clearly not. William's chest tightened again. Was there any follow-up about what happened yesterday? We spoke to the students involved, Miss Harris said, lowering her voice. Their parents were notified, but you know how these things go. The principal prefers not to draw attention to it. William frowned. That sounds like pretending it never happened. Sometimes, she said gently, schools avoid trouble by ignoring pain. He looked out the window where children were gathering near the swings. That is not how it should work. She gave him a long, searching look. You care a lot for someone who just met her. Maybe not enough people do, he said. Miss Harris smiled faintly. Amara will be in the library now. She helps the librarian organize books during recess. William thanked her and made his way down the hall. The library smelled of paper and dust, sunlight slipping through tall windows. At a small table near the back, Amara sat cross-legged, sorting picture books into neat piles. She looked up, eyes wide with recognition. Mr. William, she said quietly, you came back. He smiled. I did. I wanted to see how you were doing. She shrugged lightly. Better. Mama said bad days are just lessons with mean teachers. William chuckled softly. Your mother has a way with words. She reads a lot when she can, Amara said. She says stories make you strong inside. She stacked the books carefully, aligning the corners. William noticed the lunchbox peeking out from her backpack. It was empty again. Did you eat today? He asked. She nodded, though her eyes flickered down. Yes, the cafeteria gave me milk. I will eat when I get home. He recognized the small lie in her tone. Your mom is at work now? She cleans the offices at the Grant Tower, she said innocently. The big one downtown. William blinked. That is my building. It is? Her eyes widened. Mama says the people there are very tidy. She likes that. For a moment, he could not speak. He pictured her mother walking the marble floors of his corporate empire, invisible to everyone but the cleaning crew. She works hard, Amara continued softly. Sometimes she forgets to eat, but she always makes food for me first, even when she is tired. That is what mothers do, he murmured. They give everything they have. Amara nodded. She said one day things will get better. She just does not know when. William felt a knot form in his throat. He looked around the library, then said, Would you mind if I talk to your mother sometime? She tilted her head, thoughtful. Why? Because I think she deserves help, not pity, he said. Amara studied him for a moment, as if measuring his honesty. Then she smiled. Mama says good people do not need to announce it. They just do it. William smiled back, humbled. Your mother sounds like someone I should meet. The school bell rang. and Amara gathered her books. "I have to go to class now," she said. "Thank you for visiting." He watched her walk away, her yellow ribbon swaying behind her like a small beam of sunlight. As she disappeared into the hallway, William stood in silence, feeling something shift deep inside him. He had spent years fixing systems, numbers, and profits, but here was a problem that could not be solved with money alone. It required humanity, the kind he had long forgotten. He left the library, his mind already forming a plan. By the time he reached the parking lot, the decision was made. He would find her mother that evening. He would see for himself what kind of world this child came home to. Because for the first time in a long while, William Grant was not thinking like a billionaire. He was thinking like a man who wanted to do right. That evening, the city was washed in the soft orange glow of sunset as William Grant's car turned onto a narrow street lined with small, weathered apartment buildings. The driver slowed, unsure if the address was correct. The street was quiet, except for the hum of traffic in the distance and the faint barking of a dog. "You can wait here," William said, stepping out. He walked toward a building whose paint had peeled in long strips, the stair rail rusted from years of rain. He checked the paper in his hand, apartment 12B. The hallway smelled faintly of detergent and old coffee. The elevator was broken, so he climbed the stairs, each creak echoing in the stillness. On the third floor, a door stood slightly open, and a woman's soft voice drifted out, humming a lullaby. William hesitated before knocking gently. The humming stopped. "Who is it?" The voice was cautious but not unkind. "My name is William Grant," he said. "I believe you know my company. I came to speak with you about your daughter, Amara." There was a pause, then the sound of the chain sliding off the lock. The door opened to reveal a woman in her late 30s, her dark hair pulled back, her uniform still damp from cleaning solution. Her eyes were tired but alert, the same deep brown as Amara's. "You are Mr. Grant?" she asked, clearly uncertain. He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. May I come in?" She hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. The apartment was small but spotless. A single lamp lit the living room, where a few drawings hung on the wall, bright crayon colors on paper that had begun to curl at the edges. William noticed one of them immediately. It showed a little girl with a yellow ribbon holding hands with a man in a suit. Beneath it, in shaky letters, Amara had written, "Be kind, and the world listens." The woman caught his glance and smiled faintly. "She likes to draw after school," she said. "It helps her stay hopeful." William nodded, touched. "She is remarkable. I met her at school after what happened in the cafeteria." The woman stiffened slightly. "She told me," she said quietly. "I wanted to come to the school, but she begged me not to. She said she did not want to cause trouble. That is how she is too forgiving." William studied her face. "You raised her well. She has more dignity than most adults I know." The woman looked away, embarrassed but grateful. "Thank you, Mr. Grant, but dignity does not pay rent. I try my best, but sometimes it feels like trying to hold water in my hands." William took a slow breath. "I understand. May I ask how long have you been working at Grant Tower?" 5 years, she said. "Mostly night shifts. It is quiet then, and I can finish before Amara wakes up. She waits for me to come home in the morning so we can eat breakfast together. Then I sleep a few hours before she goes to school." Her voice trembled slightly. "I did not know you would ever know my name." He frowned. "You should have been seen long ago." The words came out heavier than he expected. She gave a small smile. "People like me are meant to stay unseen, Mr. Grant. It is easier that way." William looked around the room again. There was no television, no fancy furniture, just a second-hand couch, a small bookshelf, and 2 neatly folded blankets on the floor. On the kitchen counter sat the old lunchbox Amara carried. The lid had been washed and polished until it shone faintly under the light. He stepped closer. "She keeps this so carefully," he said. "She said her mother packed it with love." The woman's eyes softened. "That is all I have to give her, love and faith. I tell her we cannot choose where we start, but we can choose how we carry it." For a long moment, the room was silent except for the ticking of a clock. Then William said, "What if I could make things easier for you? Better pay, regular hours, and a scholarship for Amara's education. You both deserve more than this. She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. Why would you do that? He met her gaze steadily. Because your daughter reminded me what matters. She reminded me that decency still exists, and I do not want to forget it again. The woman's eyes filled with tears, though she tried to hide them. Mr. Grant, I do not want charity, she said softly. I just want a fair chance. That is exactly what I am offering, he replied. A fair chance. She nodded slowly, emotion thick in her voice. Then thank you. You will not regret it. Just then, the front door opened, and Amara rushed in, her shoes squeaking on the floor. Mama, I finished my homework. She stopped when she saw William and gasped. Mr. William, you are here, he smiled. I promised I would visit. She grinned and ran to show him her notebook. Look, I wrote a new story. It is called The Lunch That Learned to Fly. Her mother laughed softly. She writes about everything, she said. William bent slightly to look at the pages filled with uneven handwriting and colorful doodles. It is beautiful, he said. You have a gift. Amara's cheeks glowed with pride. Mama says stories can make people see better, even when their eyes work fine. William glanced at her mother, who nodded in quiet agreement. Your mama is very wise, he said gently. The girl climbed onto the couch and began reading aloud, her voice bright and steady, the kind of sound that made even the darkest apartment feel full of light. William listened, realizing that he had walked into this home as a businessman but was leaving as something else entirely, a man who finally remembered what compassion felt like. Outside, the city lights began to shimmer against the window pane, and in that small apartment, hope no longer felt like a word. It felt real, alive, and shared among three hearts that finally saw each other. The next afternoon, William Grant waited by his car outside Rosewood Elementary as the final school bell rang. The doors burst open and children poured out, their laughter echoing across the courtyard. Among them, Amara appeared, clutching her worn lunchbox and a stack of papers. Her yellow ribbon glimmered in the late sunlight. When she saw him, she stopped mid-step, her eyes lighting up with surprise. Mr. William, she said breathlessly, are you here again? He smiled and nodded. I thought we could take you and your mother to dinner tonight, somewhere nice. Amara blinked, unsure. Like a restaurant? Yes, he said warmly. A place where they serve more than peanut butter sandwiches. She giggled softly, then grew serious. Mama does not like fancy places. She says they are for people who do not spill. Then we will find one where spilling is allowed, he said, his tone kind. She considered that, then nodded. All right, but I have to tell Mama first. Her mother arrived moments later, tired but smiling as she spotted her daughter. When she noticed William, she adjusted her uniform self-consciously. Mr. Grant, this is unexpected. Please call me William, he said. You work hard every day. Let me buy dinner for both of you. Think of it as a conversation, not a favor. She hesitated, glancing at Amara's hopeful face. All right, she said finally, but nothing too expensive. They drove downtown as dusk settled over the city. The streets shimmered with reflections of neon lights in puddles left by last night's rain. William chose a quiet family diner, its warm glow spilling onto the sidewalk. Inside, the scent of roasted chicken and baked bread filled the air. A waitress greeted them with a cheerful smile and led them to a booth by the window. Amara climbed onto the seat, eyes wide as she looked around. It smells amazing, she whispered. Her mother chuckled. Remember your manners. Yes, Mama, Amara said, folding her small hands on the table. William handed them menus, though he noticed Amara only pretended to read. Do you want me to help you pick something? He asked gently. Maybe, she said shyly. I do not know what half of these words mean. Then I will teach you, he said. Do you like chicken? Only when Mama makes it, she said honestly. Hers tastes like home. The waitress returned, and William ordered roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and apple pie for dessert. When the plates arrived, Amara's eyes widened at the sight of steam curling from the food. It looks too pretty to eat, she said softly. Food should never make you afraid to touch it, William replied. Go ahead. She picked up her fork, hesitating for only a moment before tasting the chicken. Her face brightened. "It is good," she said between small bites. "But Mama's is still better." Her mother laughed, embarrassed but proud. "Do not mind her," she said. "She tells the truth even when it stings." "That is a rare gift," William said sincerely. They ate slowly, the clinking of silverware and low music filling the spaces between their words. Amara told stories about school, about her dream of becoming a writer, and about how she wanted to buy a big notebook one day, one with a hard cover that would not bend in her backpack. "So you can write your stories?" William asked. "Yes," she said, "and maybe one day they can help people the way stories helped Mama and me." William leaned back, studying her with quiet admiration. "You have something special, Amara. Do you know that?" She looked uncertain. "Mama says being kind is the only special thing that matters." "She is right," he said, "but kindness with courage that changes lives." For a moment, the three sat in comfortable silence. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, casting golden halos through the glass. The waitress brought the apple pie, its crust perfectly golden. Amara took one bite and sighed happily. "This tastes like Christmas," she declared. "Then we will call it a celebration," William said with a smile. "For what?" she asked curiously. "For good people finding each other," he said simply. Her mother lowered her gaze, emotion flickering in her eyes. "Mr. Grant, William, I do not know how to thank you for all this." "You already have," he said softly, "by raising a daughter who reminds the world what decency looks like." Amara beamed, her legs swinging beneath the table. "Can we come back here again someday?" "Of course," William said. "Next time, you choose the place. Even if it is a taco truck," she teased. "Especially if it is a taco truck," he said, and they all laughed. After dinner, they stepped outside into the cool evening air. The city buzzed around them, but for a moment, it felt quiet, like the world had paused to let kindness breathe. Amara slipped her small hand into her mother's and reached her other toward William without looking up. He took it instinctively, the warmth of her palm startlingly real. They walked together to the car, three silhouettes framed by the glow of streetlights. When they reached the curb, Amara turned suddenly and handed William a folded napkin. "What is this?" he asked. "A thank you note," she said seriously. "I wrote it while you were talking." He unfolded it to see a few uneven lines written in blue crayon. "Thank you for not walking away." William swallowed hard, tucking the napkin carefully into his jacket pocket. "You are welcome," he said softly. As they drove away, Amara pressed her face to the window, watching the city blur by. "Mama," she whispered, "today felt different." Her mother smiled gently. "That is what hope feels like." In the back seat, William heard her words and knew she was right. For the first time in years, he felt something shift inside him, something warm, quiet, and steady. It was not charity. It was connection. The next morning dawned gray and wet, a thin mist clinging to the windows of the city. William Grant stood at his office window high above the streets, a mug of untouched coffee growing cold in his hand. His assistant, Lauren, entered quietly, carrying a folder of reports. "You have 3 calls waiting in the quarterly review at 10, she said. William did not turn. "Cancel everything," he replied. "Sir?" "Everything, just for today." Lauren hesitated, then nodded and left without another word. He had not slept well. His mind kept replaying the image of Amara's small hand slipping into his the night before, the laughter at dinner, the glow in her mother's eyes, the napkin folded neatly with the words, "Thank you for not walking away." It felt like more than a gesture. It felt like a promise. He could not explain why, but something inside him told him he had to keep it. Later that afternoon, when he stopped by Rosewood Elementary to deliver a set of donated computers, the principal greeted him warmly. "Mr. Grant, this is an honor," she said. "The children will be thrilled." But as he looked around the playground, something felt off. The familiar flash of yellow ribbon was missing. "Where is Amara?" he asked suddenly. The principal blinked. "Amara Johnson? She is not enrolled anymore. Her mother called this morning to say they had to move." The word struck him like a blow. "Move? Where?" "She did not say," the woman replied. "Only that something came up. I am sorry." William stepped back, confusion and concern twisting inside him. He thanked the principal and left quickly, his thoughts racing. That evening, after calling 3 community centers and 2 local shelters with no luck, he drove to their old apartment building. The hallway was darker than before, the stairwell silent. He knocked on the door of 12B, but there was no answer. The door was slightly ajar again, but this time the apartment inside was empty. The walls were bare, the drawings gone, the light bulb swinging slightly from the ceiling fan. Only one thing remained on the small table near the window, the silver lunchbox. It sat perfectly centered, its metal surface reflecting the faint light from the street. William picked it up carefully, his throat tightening. Inside was a folded note. The paper was soft from being held too many times. In Amara's handwriting, it read, "Mr. William, do not worry. Mama says sometimes goodbyes are just pauses. We will come back when things are better. Please keep my lunchbox safe. It remembers kindness." He sat down slowly, the silence pressing in around him. For the first time in years, he felt the sting of helplessness, a feeling that money and power could not fix. He turned the lunchbox over in his hands, remembering how proud Amara had been of it, how she had called it her treasure because it held more than food, it held care. Outside, rain began to fall again, streaking down the window like tears. William set the lunchbox gently on the table, staring at it for a long time before standing and leaving the building. In the car, he told his driver, "Take me to the Grant Tower." When he arrived, the lobby lights glowed against the marble floors, polished to perfection. He walked past the reception desk and down the hallway where cleaning carts were neatly lined against the wall. He saw one woman mopping near the end and for a moment thought it might be Amara's mother. But when she turned, it was someone else. "Excuse me," he said. "Do you know a woman named Evelyn Johnson? She worked the night shift here." The woman shook her head. "No, sir. I think she left last week. She said she was moving closer to family." "Do you know where?" he asked quickly. "No, sir. She did not say." William thanked her and walked back toward the elevators, frustration and sorrow swirling together. He returned to his office, placed the lunchbox on his desk, and stared at it for a long time. The city stretched out beneath him, endless and indifferent. He remembered what Amara's mother had said. "People like me are meant to stay unseen." But he could not accept that. Not anymore. He pressed the intercom button. "Lauren," he said. "Yes, sir. Call the foundation. I want a new program launched by next month. Scholarships, meal support, and family housing for children in need. Name it after someone." "After whom?" Lauren asked. He looked at the lunchbox gleaming under the office lights. "The Amara Program," he said softly. "Make sure it starts here, in this city. No child should ever have to say they are fine when they are not." "Yes, sir," she said quietly. When the office was silent again, William leaned back in his chair, the lunchbox still in front of him. He opened it one last time, tracing his fingers over the folded note inside. The words, "Please keep my lunchbox safe," echoed in his mind like a prayer. He closed the lid gently, as if sealing a promise. Outside, the rain slowed, and a thin beam of sunlight broke through the clouds, falling across his desk. For the first time since morning, William smiled faintly. Somewhere, he hoped, Amara and her mother were safe, maybe even smiling too. He whispered into the quiet, "I will keep it safe, I promise." The lunchbox glimmered in the soft light, a small symbol of a child's dignity shining brighter than all the wealth in the world. Weeks passed, and winter began to settle over the city, coating rooftops in thin frost and painting the morning air with fog. The Grant Foundation's new project was already underway. The press wrote about it, schools praised it, and donations poured in. But for William Grant, none of it felt finished. He still thought of the small silver lunchbox on his desk and the little girl who had trusted him to keep it safe. Every evening, when the city lights flickered on below his office window, he would glance at it and wonder where she had gone. One Friday evening, as he was leaving the building, he noticed a woman sitting outside near the steps, wrapped in a worn coat. Her head was bent as she looked through a small bag of cleaning supplies. Something about the scene made him pause. When she looked up, his heart stopped for a moment. It was Evelyn Johnson, though she looked thinner, her face pale under the streetlights. "Miss Johnson," he said softly, stepping forward. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Mr. Grant," she said, "I did not think I would see you again." "I have been looking for you," he said, relief in his voice. "Where is Amara?" Evelyn exhaled shakily. "She is safe. We moved in with my sister on the east side. Things got hard after I left the job. I could not keep up with the rent." "Why did you not tell me?" he asked gently. "I left my number. You could have called." "Because you already did enough," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I did not want you to think we were a burden." He shook his head. "You and your daughter could never be a burden." She smiled faintly. "Amara talks about you every night. She keeps drawing pictures of the tall man with the kind eyes." The words stirred something deep inside him. "Can I see her?" he asked. "Please." Evelyn hesitated, then nodded slowly. "She will be so happy." The next day, William drove across town to a quiet neighborhood near the old train tracks. The houses were small but neat, lined with laundry hanging from balconies. Children played in the street, their laughter rising into the cold air. Evelyn led him to a modest two-room home with a blue door. When it opened, Amara stood there, her yellow ribbon still bright against her dark hair. For a heartbeat, she just stared, her eyes wide, and then she ran forward. "Mr. William," she cried, her voice full of joy. He knelt as she threw her arms around him, the sheer warmth of her hug catching him off guard. "You came back," she whispered. "I promised I would," he said, smiling. "I kept your lunchbox safe, just like you asked." Her face lit up. "You still have it?" "Every day on my desk," he said. "It reminds me to do better." She giggled softly. "Mama said you were the kind of man who remembers promises." "Your mother was right," he said, "and now, I have another one to make." Evelyn looked curious. "Another promise?" He nodded. "I came to ask if you would let me help again, this time properly. I have arranged a scholarship program through my foundation. It will help children like Amara stay in school and give their parents steady jobs with fair pay. You were my inspiration for it." Evelyn covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. "Mr. Grant, He stopped her gently. "Please, call me William. You and Amara gave me something no one else could. You reminded me what compassion looks like." Amara tugged at his sleeve. "Does that mean we can come visit your big building again?" she asked eagerly. He smiled. "It means more than that. How would you feel about helping me choose which families we help first?" She blinked in surprise. "You want me to help you?" "Yes," he said. "You see things adults miss. You see what kindness really is." She looked at her mother, who nodded through her tears. "I can do that," Amara said proudly. "I can help people." "I know you can," William said, his voice thick with emotion. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly, but beautifully. Amara showed him her new drawings taped to the wall, pictures of smiling children, open skies, and a silver lunchbox with wings. "It flies," she explained seriously, "because kindness travels faster when you share it." William felt his chest tighten, his heart full in a way he had not known in years. Before he left, Amara ran to her small desk and returned with a folded piece of paper. "This is for you," she said. "It is a map to our new home, so you never lose us again." He took it carefully, his hands trembling slightly. "I will never lose you," he said softly. As he stepped outside, the late afternoon light shimmered across the quiet street. Amara waved from the doorway, her yellow ribbon fluttering in the breeze like a small flag of hope. William looked back one last time before getting into his car. He glanced at the folded paper in his hand, then at the city skyline in the distance. For the first time in a long while, he felt certain that the world could change one act of kindness at a time, one little girl at a time. And as the car pulled away, the sun broke through the clouds, painting the world in gold, just like the ribbon in her hair. Winter loosened its grip slowly, and by early March the streets of the city began to fill with the hum of life again. The Grant Foundation's new initiative, named the Amara Program, had begun to take shape. Across the city, families who had once struggled to afford meals or education were now receiving steady help. For William Grant, the transformation felt more personal than professional. Every file, every scholarship approved carried the echo of one little girl's voice. One evening, he drove quietly to the East Side neighborhood where Evelyn and Amara lived. He did not send a driver this time. He wanted to see for himself, without assistance or cameras, the world they called home. The sun had set, but the windows of a small diner glowed with warm light. Through the glass, he saw Evelyn standing behind the counter, her sleeves rolled up, washing dishes in steady rhythm. There was calm determination in her movements, the same grace he had seen when she first opened her apartment door months ago. At a corner table, Amara sat with her homework spread across the surface, her feet swinging in midair, a small pencil tucked behind her ear. William pushed open the door, the bell above it chiming softly. The scent of soup and bread filled the air. Evelyn looked up and smiled, surprise flickering across her face. "Mr. Grant," she said, wiping her hands quickly. "Or should I say, William?" "William is fine," he said, smiling. "I was nearby and thought I would stop in." "You are always welcome here," she said warmly. "Amara, look who it is." The girl turned, her eyes lighting up as she jumped off the chair. "Mr. William, you found us again," he laughed. "You are not very easy to lose. Mama works here now," she said proudly. "She says the owner is nice and lets me stay as long as I do my homework." "It looks like you are doing a lot of that," he said, noticing the neat pages covered in pencil writing. "I am trying to finish early," she said. "There is a man outside who plays the guitar every night. I like to listen before bed." Evelyn shook her head fondly. "She has a poet's heart," she said, "and no sense of bedtime." William smiled, then asked softly, "Do you mind if I sit?" "Please," Evelyn said. "It is not busy tonight." He sat down across from Amara, who immediately pushed a cup of hot cocoa toward him. "This is for you," she said. "Mama said customers get free cocoa when they are kind." William accepted it with a grateful nod. "That seems like a good rule." They talked while Evelyn continued to work. Amara told him about her new school, her favorite teacher, and how she had started writing stories about people who helped others without expecting anything in return. "One story is about a man who builds bridges for people who cannot cross rivers," she explained, her eyes shining. "He never asks for thanks, but every time he finishes a bridge, he finds a yellow ribbon tied to the railing." William listened intently, his heart tightening in the most beautiful way. "That is a wonderful story," he said quietly. "Do you think you will finish it?" "I will," she said confidently. "I just have to think of the ending." "Sometimes endings write themselves," he said, "when good people keep doing good things." She smiled at that. Evelyn joined them a few minutes later, carrying a plate of food. "You should eat something," she said. "You look like you have been working too much." "I could say the same about you," he replied. "But I can see you are happier here." "It is honest work," she said, "and Amara likes the smell of fresh bread. That is enough." William studied her face. "You have done more than enough," he said softly. "Because of you, hundreds of families have food and security now." Evelyn looked down, humbled. "I did not do that. You did." "No," he said firmly. "We did. You inspired it." The doorbell chimed again, and a gust of cold air swept in as two customers entered. Evelyn excused herself, leaving William and Amara at the table. Outside, the streetlight flickered, casting shifting shadows through the window. Amara traced her finger along the edge of her cocoa mug. "Mr. William," she said softly, "when I grow up, I want to build something that helps people too. Maybe not bridges or buildings, but something that feels like hope." He nodded slowly. "You already are." She tilted her head. "How?" "Every story you write," he said. "Every kind thing you do. You are building something invisible, but stronger than concrete." She smiled, her eyes glowing with quiet pride. When Evelyn returned, William stood to leave. "Before I go," he said, reaching into his coat pocket, "I brought something for you both." He placed a small envelope on the table. Inside was a letter confirming Evelyn's acceptance into a new training program offered by the Amara Foundation, one that would allow her to manage staff at better pay and hours. Evelyn gasped softly. "William, this is too much." "It is not charity," he said. "It is recognition. You earned this." Tears shimmered in her eyes as she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. Amara reached across the table and took his hand. "You are part of our story now," she said. He smiled gently. "Then make it a good one." As he stepped out into the night, the sound of laughter and clinking dishes followed him. The air was crisp, carrying the faint notes of a guitar from somewhere down the street. He paused, looking back through the window. Inside, Amara leaned against her mother, smiling as they watched him go. The silver lunchbox sat on the shelf behind the counter, polished and gleaming. In that moment, William realized that maybe he had been wrong. Some endings did not need to be written. They only needed to be lived. The following Saturday morning brought soft sunlight, and the smell of spring rain still lingering in the air. William Grant parked his car near the diner where Evelyn worked, carrying a small package wrapped carefully in brown paper. Inside was the lunchbox, Amara's silver treasure, polished until it gleamed. As he entered, the bell above the door chimed, and Amara looked up from the counter where she was coloring a drawing. Her face lit up like the morning Sunday. "Mr. William," she exclaimed, running toward him. "You came back again." "I promised I would," he said, smiling, "and I brought something that belongs to you." He placed the wrapped box on the table and gestured for her to open it. With eager hands, Amara peeled away the paper, revealing the lunchbox. For a moment, she just stared at it, her eyes wide and glistening. Then she whispered, "You kept it safe." "I told you I would," he said softly. "It stayed on my desk every day. It reminded me of you." She traced the edge of the lid with her fingers as if it were made of gold. "Mama, look," she said excitedly. Evelyn came from behind the counter, drying her hands on her apron. When she saw the lunchbox, her eyes filled with emotion. "I never thought we would see that again," she said quietly. "It never really left," William replied. "It became the reason behind the Amara Program. Every time someone receives help, I think of this lunchbox." Amara's smile grew even wider. "It remembers kindness," she said, repeating her own words from the letter she had written him long ago. William chuckled. "Yes, it does." The diner was quiet that morning, so Evelyn joined them at the table. They shared pancakes and talked about the future. William asked Amara about school, and she told him about a writing contest her teacher had announced. "The theme is bravery," she said, "but I do not know what to write." "You already know what bravery looks like," he said gently. "It is in your story, Amara. You lived it." "You mean the lunch thing?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "You stood tall when it would have been easier to cry. You forgave when others mocked you. That is courage." She thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Maybe I can write about that," she said, "but not to make people sad. I want it to end with hope." "Then it will be a perfect story," he said. Evelyn listened quietly, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. She looked at William and said softly, "You know, when that day happened, I was so angry at the world. But now, I think maybe it had to happen. Maybe it was the only way for paths like ours to cross." "Maybe," William said thoughtfully. "Sometimes pain opens doors that comfort keeps closed." They fell silent for a moment, the hum of the coffee machine filling the space between them. Then Amara broke the stillness with a question. "Mr. William, do you ever get scared?" He blinked, surprised. "Scared of what?" "Of doing good things," she said, "like helping people. What if they do not like it, or think it is wrong?" He leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. "That is a wise question. The truth is, doing good can be scary. People might misunderstand you or think you have another reason. But if your heart is honest, you keep going anyway. That is how you know it is real." Amara listened carefully, her brow furrowed as if memorizing each word. "So I should not be afraid to write my story," she said. "Not at all," he said. "You should write it loud enough for the world to hear." The bell over the door rang again as a few new customers entered, shaking rain from their jackets. Evelyn stood to greet them, but before she left the table, William reached into his coat pocket and handed her an envelope. "What is this?" she asked. "Something official," he said. "It is a confirmation letter. You and Amara are invited to attend the first community event for the Amara program next week. I want you both there. The program would not exist without you." Evelyn's eyes widened. "Are you sure? We do not belong in fancy events." "Yes, you do," he said firmly. "You belong at the heart of it." Amara clapped her hands together. "Can I wear my yellow ribbon?" "You have to," William said with a grin. "It is your lucky charm." She giggled. Then, it is a deal. Later that evening, when the diner closed, William walked them home. The air was cool and filled with the distant sound of a train. As they reached their street, Amara stopped suddenly. "Wait," she said, opening her lunchbox. She took out a folded napkin and a single chocolate coin wrapped in gold foil. "For you," she said, "so you do not forget to eat when you are busy helping everyone." William knelt down, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, Amara. I will keep it safe." "You have to," she said. "It is your turn to remember kindness." He smiled and promised he would. When he finally returned to his car, he placed the napkin and chocolate coin beside the folded note she had written months ago. The city lights reflected softly on the windshield, and he realized that sometimes the smallest gifts carried the greatest weight. Somewhere behind him, laughter echoed down the street, a child's laughter, bright and real. He drove away slowly, the silver lunchbox safely tucked in her arms and the memory of it glowing in his heart. The night before the launch of the Amara Program, William Grant stayed late in his office, the city lights stretching endlessly beneath him. The silver lunchbox sat open on his desk, the small gold-wrapped chocolate coin beside it, untouched. The folded napkin lay neatly beneath, with a child's handwriting faintly visible. "Remember kindness." He traced the words with his thumb, the memory of Amara's voice still echoing in his mind. Tomorrow would be the official unveiling of the project that had grown from her courage, a network of scholarships, food programs, and fair-wage employment for parents across the city. It was the biggest humanitarian effort his foundation had ever attempted. Yet as he looked out across the skyline, William felt something unsettled. For years, he had built companies on logic and profit, but this was built on something far more fragile: hope. And hope required trust. He wondered if the people inside his organization shared that same purpose, or if some still saw this as just another publicity effort. As dawn approached, he made a decision. He called Lauren, his assistant, and asked her to prepare a private meeting with the board of directors before the press event. "At 8 sharp, he said, "and make sure everyone attends." The next morning, the conference room was filled with the quiet rustle of papers and murmured greetings. The executives looked polished, ready for photographs and statements. William entered without a word, the lunchbox in his hands. When he set it down on the long oak table, the sound made everyone fall silent. "Before we begin the ceremony," he said evenly, "there is something we need to discuss." He opened the lunchbox and placed the folded napkin on the table. "This," he said, "is the reason we are here. A 7-year-old girl named Amara taught me what dignity looks like when the world gives you none. She reminded me that our wealth means nothing if it cannot lift someone else." A few board members exchanged uneasy glances. One man cleared his throat. "Mr. Grant, no one questions your intentions, but this program is expensive. We have shareholders to consider." William raised a hand to stop him. "I am aware," he said calmly, "but I am not asking for approval. I am asking for conscience. Because if we build this on numbers instead of hearts, it will fail before it begins." The room was silent. Then, slowly, a woman at the far end spoke. "What if this works?" she asked quietly. "What if it changes lives?" "Then we will have done something worth remembering," William said. He closed the lunchbox gently. "Tomorrow, when we stand in front of the cameras, I want you to remember this is not charity. It is justice." With that, he left the room. That evening, the event took place in the grand hall of Grant Tower. Banners bearing the words, "The Amara Program," hung from the walls, and families filled the seats, many wearing their best clothes though they were far from rich. Reporters buzzed, cameras flashed, and music played softly through the speakers. Evelyn and Amara stood near the front, their eyes bright with pride and disbelief. Amara wore her yellow ribbon, tied perfectly. When she saw William approach, she waved. "You look fancy," she whispered when he reached them. "You do too," he said, smiling. "Are you ready for your big moment?" "Me?" she gasped. "What do you mean?" "You are going to help me tell the story," he said. Her eyes widened, but she nodded bravely. The ceremony began with speeches from city officials and education leaders, but the crowd grew truly quiet when William stepped up to the podium. He glanced toward Amara, who stood beside Evelyn near the stage steps, then looked at the audience. Every change starts with a single act, he began. For me, it began in a school cafeteria, with a little girl whose lunch was thrown away. She did not fight back. She did not cry. She simply stood with grace that shamed the cruelty around her. Her name is Amara. The audience stirred as William gestured for her to join him. Amara hesitated, then walked onto the stage, her small shoes clicking softly on the polished floor. The spotlight followed her as she stood beside him, clutching her silver lunchbox. "This is the girl who reminded me that kindness is not weakness," William said. "She reminded me that dignity does not come from wealth, but from how we treat others." The crowd began to applaud. Amara looked up at him nervously, and he smiled. "Would you like to say something?" he whispered. She took a deep breath and stepped closer to the microphone. "I just want to say thank you," she said, her voice clear but trembling. "Thank you for remembering people like us, and for letting my lunchbox help." Laughter and applause filled the hall. William knelt slightly beside her and whispered, "That was perfect." After the speeches, the crowd mingled, and reporters took photos. Evelyn hugged her daughter tightly, tears glistening in her eyes. "You did beautifully," she said. William joined them, his expression calm but full of emotion. "You both did," he said. "This is only the beginning." That night, long after the event ended and the lights of the hall dimmed, William returned to his office. He placed the lunchbox back on his desk, beside a framed photo of the ceremony, Amara standing proudly beside him, her yellow ribbon glowing like sunlight. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. Somewhere in the city, a little girl slept soundly, dreaming of bridges yet to be built, while a man who had once counted his worth in dollars now measured it in kindness. In the weeks following the launch of the Amara Program, stories began to spread across the city, families finding jobs, children returning to school, and communities coming together to rebuild their sense of dignity. The media called it a revolution of kindness. For William Grant, it was not about recognition, it was about keeping a promise. Every morning, he stopped by his office window with a cup of coffee and looked at the silver lunchbox on his desk. It had become more than a symbol, it was a daily reminder that one act of compassion could ripple farther than any investment ever could. One afternoon, as he was reviewing new applications for scholarships, Lauren entered with a hesitant knock. "Sir," she said softly, "there is someone here to see you. She says she is from the East Side neighborhood." William looked up immediately. "Send her in," he said. A moment later, Evelyn stepped into the room, her hands folded nervously. She wore her diner uniform and carried an envelope. "I hope I am not interrupting," she said. "Never," William said, standing to greet her. "It is good to see you." She smiled politely. "I came to say thank you for everything you have done, and I wanted to give you this." She handed him the envelope. Inside was a neatly written letter on diner stationery. "What is this?" he asked, reading the first line. "A resignation," she said quietly. "You are leaving the program?" he asked, startled. "Why?" "Because it is time for someone else to have this chance," she said gently. "You gave me a position, training, and stability. I will always be grateful, but there are other mothers who need it now." William studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You are extraordinary, Evelyn," he said. "You remind me where real strength comes from." She smiled faintly. "From people who never give up," she said. "Like you." She hesitated before continuing. "There is one more thing. Amara's school asked if I could bring you an invitation." She handed him a folded card, decorated with small drawings of stars and hearts. Across the front, written in bright crayon, were the words, "You are invited to our student showcase." Inside, in neat handwriting, it read, "Mr. William, I am going to read my story about bravery. Please come. Love, Amara." William smiled as he read it. "Of course I will come," he said softly. "She would be so happy," Evelyn said. "It is tomorrow evening at 6. I would not miss it for the world," he said. The next day, the school auditorium was filled with parents, teachers, and children. The stage was decorated with paper stars, and a banner hung across the back reading, "Voices of Tomorrow." William took a seat near the back, wanting Amara to see him without feeling nervous. When her turn came, she walked onto the stage holding her notebook, her yellow ribbon shining under the lights. The room quieted as she began to read. My story is called The Lunch That Learned to Fly, she said proudly. It is about a little girl who lost her lunch but found kindness instead. Her voice was steady as she read, describing how the lunchbox had traveled from sadness to hope, from loneliness to love. She ended with the words, "Sometimes what we lose helps us find who we are." When she finished, the audience erupted in applause. William felt something stir deep inside his chest, a quiet, overwhelming pride. After the event, Amara ran to him in the hallway, her notebook clutched tight. "You came," she said, her face glowing. "I told Mama you would. I would not have missed it," he said, kneeling to meet her eyes. "You were wonderful, Amara. Did you like the story?" she asked eagerly. "I loved it," he said. "You have a gift. You speak from your heart." "Mama says the heart never lies," she said with a grin. "She is right," he said. Evelyn joined them, her expression warm. "Thank you for coming," she said. "It meant everything to her." "It meant everything to me," William replied. As they walked out together into the cool evening air, Amara held his hand again, the way she had months ago in the cafeteria. "Mr. William," she said quietly, "what happens now that everyone knows about the program?" He looked down at her, thinking. "Now," he said slowly, "we make sure it never stops, that it keeps growing, and someday, maybe you will help lead it." She gasped softly. "Me? Yes, you," he said. "You have the heart for it." She smiled, her yellow ribbon fluttering in the breeze. "Then I will start learning now." "You already are," he said, smiling. They reached the car, and before leaving, Amara handed him a small piece of paper folded twice. "For you," she said. He opened it to find a hand-drawn picture of the silver lunchbox with wings, soaring over a city. At the bottom she had written, "Thank you for helping kindness fly." William felt tears sting his eyes. "I should be the one thanking you," he said softly. "You changed more lives than you know." As they said goodbye, he watched mother and daughter walk down the sidewalk hand in hand, their laughter fading into the night. For a long time, he stood there under the streetlight, looking at the drawing in his hand. Then he smiled to himself, knowing that the real future of the program, the real hope, was already in flight. The next morning, William Grant arrived early at the Grant Foundation headquarters. The silver lunchbox sat where it always did, reflecting the soft light of dawn through the wide glass windows. But something felt different that day. He had been thinking about Evelyn and Amara all night, about how their courage had changed him, and about how the simplest acts could turn into something that reached across an entire city. As he looked out over the skyline, the city below felt quieter, as if it too were catching its breath after months of change. Lauren entered the office carrying a stack of folders. "Good morning, sir," she said, setting them down gently. "You have a full day ahead. The City Council wants to partner with the Foundation for a new education initiative, and there is a television interview request from the national news." William smiled faintly. "Decline the interview. Let the results speak for themselves." Lauren nodded, used to his quiet humility. "Anything else, sir?" He paused for a moment before answering. "Send a message to Evelyn Johnson. I want her to consider a new position with the Foundation. Something permanent." Lauren's eyebrows lifted. "Permanent?" "Yes," he said. "Director of Community Relations. She has lived what this program stands for. I cannot think of anyone better to lead it." "I will contact her right away," Lauren said with a smile. Later that week, Evelyn walked into his office, looking both nervous and proud. "William, this is too much," she said softly. "I am honored, but I do not have the education for a position like that." "You have something better," he said firmly. "You have experience, empathy, and integrity. The rest can be taught, but what you already have cannot." Tears welled in her eyes. "You really mean that?" "I do," he said. "You earned this." Evelyn looked around the office and noticed the silver lunchbox on the desk. "It still lives here," she said, smiling through her tears. "Of course it does," William said. "It belongs to all of us now." A few days later, the Foundation hosted a small gathering to celebrate the next phase of the Amara Program. Families who had benefited from the initiative came to share their stories. Among them were teachers, single parents, and children now thriving in schools they had once been forced to leave. When Evelyn took the stage to speak, she glanced at William, who gave her a reassuring nod. when this began, she said into the microphone. I thought I was just accepting help. But I realized that when people are treated with dignity, they begin to believe in themselves again. This program is not about charity. It is about rebuilding pride one family at a time. The room erupted in applause. In the front row, Amara sat with her notebook in her lap, scribbling every word as if it were part of her next story. After the event, William joined them outside, where the spring air was soft and filled with the scent of blooming flowers. Amara ran up to him, holding her notebook high. I am writing something new, she said. It is about my mama, the woman who makes hope sound easy. He smiled. That sounds like a story worth reading. She nodded eagerly. Do you want to be in it? Only if you let me read the ending first, he said, laughing. No, she said with a grin. You have to wait like everyone else. Evelyn chuckled softly. She has your determination now. I think she had it long before she met me, William replied. As they walked down the steps of the foundation building, the afternoon sunlight caught on the windows, casting golden reflections across the plaza. Reporters were taking photos, but William did not care about the attention. All he could see was Amara skipping ahead, her yellow ribbon fluttering like a banner of victory. Do you ever miss the old days? Evelyn asked quietly as they watched her daughter. William thought for a moment. Sometimes, he admitted, but I think I was half awake back then. Now, I see things clearly. You mean people? She asked. Yes, he said. People like you, like her. You showed me what matters, she smiled. You just needed to remember. That evening, William returned to his office one last time before heading home. The city lights were beginning to glow, and the silver lunchbox shimmered faintly under the desk lamp. He opened it and placed inside 2 items. Amara's drawing of the lunchbox with wings and her new story's first page, which she had secretly left on his desk earlier. The title read, Kindness Never Retires. Beneath it, in her careful handwriting, she had written, For Mr. William, who learned to see people instead of problems. William closed the lunchbox gently, his heart full. For years, he had built skyscrapers and companies, but it was this, a simple metal box, a child's hope, a mother's dignity that had built him back into something human. He turned off the lights, left the office, and stepped into the night where laughter from a nearby park drifted through the air. Somewhere out there, a little girl was still writing stories about hope, and for the first time in a long time, William Grant knew his story was not over either. Several months passed, and the city seemed to hum with a quieter kind of energy, one shaped by compassion instead of ambition. The Amara program had expanded far beyond its original reach. Schools that once struggled to feed their students now offered free lunches, families found housing assistance, and children once forgotten were beginning to dream again. For William Grant, every success felt personal, a reflection of one girl's courage and one mother's resilience. On a crisp autumn morning, he stood outside Rosewood Elementary, the same school where everything had begun. The playground was filled with laughter, the sound of children chasing one another through fallen leaves. It felt lighter now, brighter, as if the weight of indifference had been lifted. He had come at the invitation of the principal, who wanted him to see the new cafeteria renovation funded by the Amara program. Inside, the once drab room was transformed. The walls were painted a soft yellow, sunlight poured through freshly cleaned windows, and a mural covered the far side, an image of a little girl holding a silver lunchbox, surrounded by the words, Kindness begins here. William stood still, staring at it, his throat tightening. The principal approached quietly. The students painted it together, she said. They insisted on including the lunchbox. They said it was the heart of the story. They are right, William said softly. It is. Later that afternoon, Evelyn and Amara arrived for the small ceremony the school had arranged. Amara ran up to him, her face glowing. Mr. William, you came, she said, her yellow ribbon bouncing as she moved. Of course I did, he said. I would not miss this for anything. She looked around the room, her eyes wide with wonder. It looks so different now, she said. Do you remember the first day? I remember, he said quietly. I remember everything. Evelyn placed a gentle hand on his arm. You changed this place, she said. No, he replied. You both did. The principal called everyone's attention, and invited Amara to cut the ribbon to officially open the new cafeteria. She held the scissors nervously, looking up at her mother and William for reassurance. He smiled. "Go on," he said softly. "You have been brave before." She nodded and, with one confident snip, the ribbon fell away. The room erupted in applause. Amara beamed, and her mother's eyes shone with tears. When the applause quieted, William stepped forward to speak. "This cafeteria is more than a room," he said, his voice calm and steady. "It is proof that kindness can rebuild what cruelty once broke. A little girl stood here once and showed more courage than most men I have met. She reminded us all what dignity looks like." The room fell silent. William looked at Amara, who was holding her lunchbox against her chest like a treasure. "This program carries her name because she taught me something I will never forget, that real change begins not in wealth, but in empathy." The crowd applauded again, many wiping their eyes. After the ceremony, Amara guided William to one of the new lunch tables. "Do you like it?" she asked eagerly. "I love it," he said. "It is perfect." She grinned. "Mama says you are a teacher now." "A teacher?" he laughed. "I do not think so." "Yes, you are," she insisted. "You taught everyone to see people, not just problems." William paused, her words sinking deep. "Then maybe you are my best student," he said. She smiled, proud of the idea. As students began to file in for lunch, one small boy at the next table accidentally spilled his tray. Food scattered across the floor, and for a moment, the room went still. Then Amara stood, walked over, and knelt beside him. "It is all right," she said kindly. "We can clean it up together." She gathered the spilled food, smiling as she helped him to his feet. The boy mumbled a thank you, and Amara patted his shoulder. "Do not worry," she said. "Everyone drops something sometimes." William watched the moment unfold, feeling a quiet ache in his chest, the kind that came, not from sadness, but from witnessing goodness in its purest form. Evelyn leaned toward him and whispered, "She learned that from you." "No," he said softly. "She reminded me who I was supposed to be." As the day ended, and the children left the cafeteria, Amara ran back to him one last time. "Mr. William," she said breathlessly, "Mama and I baked cookies for you. They are in the lunchbox." She handed it to him, the silver surface now covered in tiny stickers of stars and hearts. "We made them together," she said proudly. "Mama says gifts made with love last longer." He smiled, accepting the box carefully. "Then this will last forever." As he watched them walk away, hand in hand, he opened the lunchbox and saw the cookies wrapped neatly inside. Beneath them was a small note written in Amara's handwriting. "You taught me that the world can change. Now it is my turn." The sunlight through the cafeteria window caught the silver lid, and for a brief moment, the reflection looked like a beam of light stretching upward. William closed the box gently, feeling tears rise, not from grief but from gratitude. Years ago, a child had cried in this very room, and now that same child was teaching others how to stand tall. The circle was complete. Kindness, he realized, had come home. Weeks turned into months, and the story of the silver lunchbox became something of a legend within the city. Schools told it to their students, newspapers printed it as a tale of kindness, and people began leaving small silver boxes filled with food and notes of encouragement in community centers and playgrounds. The Amara program had grown into a national initiative, reaching beyond the city's borders to places where hope had once seemed out of reach. Yet for William Grant, no amount of success could replace the quiet meaning behind it all, the courage of one child and the dignity of her mother. One cold December morning, he sat by his office window, watching snow fall over the skyline. The silver lunchbox still sat on his desk, now slightly worn from years of being opened and closed, handled with care. Inside were all the mementos he had kept. The napkin with the words, "Remember kindness," the drawing of the flying lunchbox, and Amara's last note. As he looked at them, a soft knock sounded at the door. "Come in," he said. Lauren entered, her cheeks red from the winter air. "Sir, there is a visitor here to see you," she said. She did not give her full name, but she said you would recognize her. William frowned curiously. "Send her in," he said. A moment later, the door opened, and a familiar figure stepped inside. It was Evelyn, wrapped in a thick coat and holding a small gift bag. Her smile was warm but carried the kind of softness that only time could bring. "Evelyn," he said, standing immediately, "this is a surprise." "I hope it is a good one," she said, laughing. "It has been too long." "Far too long," he agreed. "How are you? And how is Amara?" "She is wonderful," Evelyn said, pride glowing in her voice. "She is in middle school now, writing more than ever. Her teacher says she has a gift for making people feel through her stories." William smiled, a wave of nostalgia washing over him. "I always knew she would." Evelyn handed him the gift bag. "She asked me to bring you this. She wanted to come herself, but she is volunteering at the community library today. She said you would understand." William reached into the bag and pulled out a neatly wrapped book with a handwritten title, "The Girl with the Silver Lunchbox." The cover was decorated with small sketches of hearts, clouds, and a pair of wings. Inside, in Amara's careful handwriting, was a note that read, "For Mr. William, who taught me that small things can carry big dreams." William's voice caught in his throat as he read it. "She wrote this?" "All by herself," Evelyn said proudly. "It is a collection of short stories she has been writing for the past year. She says she wants to publish it one day to help raise money for children who do not have enough to eat." William set the book down gently, his eyes misting. "She is already doing more good than most adults ever will," he said softly. "She learned from you," Evelyn replied. "We both did." They talked for a while, sharing updates and memories, laughter mixing with the quiet hum of the office. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in white. Before leaving, Evelyn looked around the room and smiled. "You know, she still talks about this office. She says it is where kindness lives." William chuckled. "Then it must be because of what you both brought here." "She wants you to come visit sometime," Evelyn said. "We still live in the same place. It is warmer now, though, in every way that matters." "Tell her I will," he said. "I promise." After she left, the office felt unusually still. William sat back down and opened the book again. The first story began with familiar words. Once there was a girl who carried her lunch in a silver box. Every day she hoped people would see her, not for what she had, but for who she was. He read it all the way through, each line pulling him back to that cafeteria, to that moment when a small voice had said, "They threw my lunch in the trash again." He could still hear it, not as pain now, but as purpose. He closed the book and placed it inside the lunchbox beside the other keepsakes. The lid closed with a soft click that echoed in the quiet room. That evening, he walked through the city as lights twinkled above, and the air smelled of snow and cinnamon. Near the park, he saw a little girl he did not know handing a small silver box to a man sitting on a bench. She smiled and said something before running back to her mother. The man opened the box and smiled too. William stood there for a moment, heart full, realizing that kindness had indeed taken flight. It no longer belonged to one girl, one man, or one city. It had become a way of living. He whispered into the cold air, "Thank you, Amara," before walking on, his footsteps light against the snow, the reflection of the silver lunchbox shining in his mind like a promise kept forever. Spring arrived gently, painting the city in colors that spoke of renewal. Cherry blossoms lined the sidewalks, and children carried bright kites through the park. The air smelled of promise. For William Grant, the season brought both peace and reflection. It had been nearly 2 years since that day in the cafeteria when he first heard a little girl's trembling voice pierce through laughter and indifference. That moment had changed everything: his work, his heart, and his understanding of what it meant to build something that truly mattered. On a Sunday morning, William drove through the East Side neighborhood, past the diner where Evelyn once worked. The window was freshly painted, and the sign above the door now read, "The Silver Spoon Café." Inside, laughter and the scent of cinnamon filled the air. When he stepped in, Evelyn looked up from behind the counter and smiled widely. "William," she said, drying her hands, "you found us." "I had to see this place for myself," he said, looking around. The walls were decorated with framed drawings from local children, many of them showing lunchboxes, hearts, and smiling faces. A small chalkboard read, "Pay what you can. No one leaves hungry." "It is beautiful," he said sincerely. "You did this?" Evelyn nodded proudly. "With some help from the foundation," she said. but it was Amara's idea. She said there should be a place where everyone can eat, even if they cannot pay. William smiled softly. That sounds exactly like her. She is at the back, Evelyn said. She has been helping with the breakfast service. A few moments later, Amara appeared, now taller and older, her yellow ribbon replaced by one of soft lavender. Her smile was still the same bright, genuine, and full of light. "Mr. William," she exclaimed, running to hug him. "I did not know you were coming today." "I wanted to surprise you," he said, smiling. "And it seems you have been busy." "I have," she said proudly. "We feed people here every morning. Mama says kindness tastes better when it is warm." "Your mama is very wise," he said. She giggled. "I know." As they sat at a corner table, Amara told him about her new school projects, her stories, and her dream of one day studying literature. "I want to write books that make people feel like they can change the world," she said. "You already did," William replied. "You changed mine." Amara tilted her head. "Do you really mean that?" "Every word," he said. "You taught me that the smallest act of compassion can rewrite an entire life." Evelyn joined them, bringing a plate of fresh biscuits and honey. "He is telling the truth," she said. "Do you know how many people come into this cafe because of the story of your lunchbox? It gives them hope." "It gives me hope too," Amara said, smiling. "Sometimes when I feel scared, I remember that people can be good, even if the world forgets for a little while. That is why you are special," William said softly. "You remind people to remember." They ate together as sunlight streamed through the window, warming the table. Outside, a small group of children gathered near the door, peeking in shyly. One of them, a boy about Amara's age, clutched an empty paper bag. Amara noticed immediately. "Excuse me," she said, sliding off her chair. She walked to the door and spoke gently to the boy. William and Evelyn watched as she led him inside, sat him at a table, and served him a plate of food. The boy hesitated, looking embarrassed, but Amara smiled and said, "You do not owe me anything. Just promise to be kind to someone else someday." The boy nodded, tears in his eyes. Evelyn whispered, "She has your heart now." William shook his head. "No," he said softly. "She always had her own. I just had to see it." Later that afternoon, as the cafe began to close, Amara gave William a folded piece of paper. "It is a poem I wrote," she said. "It is called The Promise." He opened it and read aloud. "If kindness had wings, it would fly through the dark. It would land where hearts forget to shine. It would carry the weight of one small spark and turn it into light divine." When he finished, he could not speak for a moment. The words felt heavier than any speech he had ever given, more powerful than any project he had built. "It is beautiful," he said quietly. "You are beautiful, Amara." "It is just words," she said shyly. "No," he said. "It is truth." Before he left, Amara handed him a small paper box wrapped with a lavender ribbon. "Do not open it until you get home," she said. He nodded, promising he would wait. That evening, back in his office, William untied the ribbon and opened the box. Inside was a tiny silver charm shaped like a lunchbox, engraved with the words, "Kindness is forever." Beneath it was a small note, from the girl whose lunchbox learned to fly. William smiled, feeling tears blur his vision. He placed the charm inside the real silver lunchbox on his desk. Where it caught the light of the setting, Sunday, the glow filled the room, soft and golden, like the warmth of a promise that had come true. Summer sunlight spilled across the city like a golden promise. The air carried the hum of life, the sound of laughter from children playing near fountains, and the soft chatter of families who now had reason to smile again. For William Grant, the world had never looked more alive. He had spent years chasing numbers and building empires, but now, every morning began with a quiet moment of gratitude as he looked at the silver lunchbox on his desk. It had become his compass, the small metal heart of everything he did. The foundation had grown stronger than ever, with branches now reaching across the country. Yet, for William, the most important story was still the one that began in a small cafeteria with a little girl's trembling voice. That story was still unfolding. One warm afternoon, He decided to visit the Silver Spoon Café again. It had become more than a restaurant. It was a haven. The smell of fresh bread drifted through the open door as he stepped inside. The place was filled with people from every walk of life, families, students, workers, all eating together, all equal. Evelyn was at the counter, her apron dusted with flour, her hair tied back. When she saw him, her face lit up with a smile that carried both familiarity and gratitude. "William," she said warmly, "you came back." "I promised I would," he said, smiling. "I needed to see how the heart of the city was doing." "It beats stronger every day," she said proudly. "Thanks to you." He shook his head. "Thanks to all of you." From behind the counter, Amara appeared, taller now, her features showing the first signs of growing up, but her eyes were still bright with the same kindness that had once melted a billionaire's cold heart. "Mr. William," she exclaimed, "I wrote something new." "Of course you did," he said, laughing softly. "May I hear it?" "After lunch," she said firmly. "Mama says no stories on an empty stomach." Evelyn laughed. "She is right. Sit down. I will bring you something good." As he ate, he watched them move through the cafe, Evelyn greeting every guest by name, Amara handing plates to children who could not reach the counter, her laughter like a melody threading through the noise. He realized that kindness had become contagious. It had spread from that one act years ago to an entire community that now lived by it. After lunch, Amara sat beside him with her notebook. "This one is called The Echo of Good Things," she said proudly. "It is about how kindness never disappears. Even when people forget, it travels, and it finds someone new." "That sounds beautiful," William said. "Read it to me." She began softly, her voice carrying the rhythm of truth. "Every time you do something kind, the world remembers, even if you do not. It turns into laughter somewhere, or a full stomach, or a door opening for someone who thought they were alone." When she finished, William sat in silence for a long moment, his heart full. "You have a gift, Amara," he said quietly. "You do not just write stories, you create light." "Mama says words are light," she said, smiling, "but only if you use them to help people see." "Then you are shining bright," he said. Evelyn walked over and handed him a small envelope. "This came for you earlier," she said. "A letter from the city council, I think." William opened it and read, his eyes widening slightly. "They are awarding the Amara Program a national honor," he said in disbelief. "They want both of you to attend the ceremony with me." "Us?" Evelyn asked, startled. "But we do not belong in places like that." "You belong exactly there," he said firmly. "This program carries your name, your courage, and your story. You both started this." Amara's eyes sparkled. "Will there be cameras?" she asked. "Probably," William said with a grin. "Then I should wear my ribbon," she said. "The yellow one." "You absolutely should," he said. "It belongs on every stage." The ceremony was scheduled for the following month, but that evening, they decided to celebrate early. The cafe stayed open late, filled with laughter and music. Neighbors brought homemade food, children drew pictures on napkins, and someone began playing guitar near the door. William sat by the window, watching as people shared food and stories like a family that had always been waiting to find each other. When the night grew quiet, Amara walked over with a plate of cookies. "You know, Mr. William," she said, "I think the world is a little kinder now." He looked around at the smiling faces, the full plates, the warmth that had replaced despair. "I think you are right," he said softly. "But it is not finished yet." "What do you mean?" she asked curiously. "Kindness," he said, "is not something you finish. It is something you keep passing on." She smiled thoughtfully. "Then I will keep passing it forever." "I know you will," he said. As he left that night, the silver lunchbox charm she had given him glinted in the cafe lights hanging from the ceiling. He placed a hand over it in his pocket, feeling its smooth shape, its weight, its meaning. Outside, the stars shimmered above the quiet city, and William thought of a time long ago when one act of cruelty had been met by the courage of a child. That courage had not just changed his life, it had changed the world. He whispered to the night, "Keep flying, little lunchbox," and walked on, smiling as the echo of good things followed behind him. The day of the national award ceremony arrived with the soft glow of morning sunlight spilling across the city skyline. The event was being held in the Capitol, in a grand hall adorned with banners that read, "Honoring the Heart of Humanity." William Grant stood at the window of his hotel room, adjusting his tie, feeling a strange mix of pride and humility. It was not the kind of event he once lived for, not about power or prestige, but about people, about a movement that had begun with a child's tears and turned into a wave of compassion. A gentle knock sounded at the door. When he opened it, he saw Evelyn and Amara standing there. Evelyn wore a simple but elegant dress, her hair pinned neatly, her eyes full of quiet strength. Amara stood beside her in a light yellow dress with her matching ribbon tied perfectly in her hair. She held the small silver lunchbox charm in her hand, swinging it slightly as she smiled. "Do we look okay?" she asked eagerly. William smiled. "You both look perfect," he said. "You are the heart of this story, after all. Mama says you are the brain," Amara teased. "Then we make a good team," he said, laughing. Together, they arrived at the hall where rows of people filled the seats, leaders, teachers, volunteers, and families touched by the Amara Program. The stage shimmered with soft light, and a giant screen displayed images of children smiling, eating, and learning in schools that once struggled. When the announcer called their names, William, Evelyn, and Amara walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. William could see the emotion in the faces of strangers who somehow felt like family. As the applause quieted, he approached the microphone. "When I was younger," he began, "I thought success was measured by what you owned. But then, one day, I met a little girl who taught me that the truest measure of success is how much good you leave behind." He turned to look at Amara. She reminded me that kindness is not weakness, and that dignity does not come from wealth, but from compassion. Her story changed mine, and perhaps changed us all. The audience erupted again in applause. When it quieted, he gestured for Amara to step forward. She hesitated for only a moment before walking up to the microphone, her small hands gripping the edges of the podium. "I do not have a big speech," she said softly, her voice steady but gentle. "I just want to say thank you to everyone who believes in kindness. When people helped me and my mama, it felt like the world got a little brighter. I think we can all be the light for someone else. We just have to remember to care." The entire hall went silent for a moment, the kind of silence that happens when words reach the soul. Then, one by one, people began to stand. Applause filled the room again, but this time it felt deeper, like gratitude itself was echoing through the walls. After the ceremony, reporters surrounded them for interviews, but William kept close to Evelyn and Amara, ensuring the moment remained theirs. Outside, under the warm afternoon sun, they stood together on the steps of the hall. "You did beautifully," William said, looking at Amara. "You spoke from the heart." "I was scared," she admitted, "but then I saw everyone listening, and it felt like they understood." "They did," Evelyn said, smiling proudly. "They saw what I see every day." William reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small wrapped in velvet. "I was saving this," he said, handing it to Amara. "For today." She opened it and gasped. Inside was a silver pin shaped like wings, engraved with the words, "Let kindness fly." "It matches the lunchbox charm," she said, smiling wide. "That is the idea," he said. "You started something that is flying farther than any of us imagined. It belongs to you." "Then I will wear it forever," she said, pinning it carefully to her dress. Evelyn placed a hand on William's shoulder. "You know," she said quietly, "you have become part of our family." "I already felt that," he said with a smile, "and I would not trade it for anything." Later that evening, as they walked through the park near the hotel, the city lights reflected off the river, glowing softly. Children chased bubbles under the street lamps, their laughter floating in the air. Amara stopped near the water's edge and said, "Mr. William, do you ever think about that day in the cafeteria?" He nodded slowly. "Every day," he said. "It reminds me where it all began." "Me too," she said softly. "But I do not feel sad anymore when I think about it. I feel proud." "You should," he said. "You turned pain into purpose." She smiled, gazing up at the sky where the first stars were appearing. "Do you think kindness lives up there too?" I think it lives everywhere people choose to carry it, he said. They stood quietly, watching the reflection of the stars ripple on the river's surface. Evelyn joined them, wrapping an arm around her daughter. The world feels lighter tonight, she said. That is because kindness has a way of doing that, William said. It does not change the world all at once. It changes one heart at a time. Amara looked up at him and whispered, "Then we will keep doing it. Forever." "Forever," he echoed. As the night deepened, the city lights shimmered like 1,000 tiny wings across the sky, and somewhere within that glow, the spirit of a small silver lunchbox seemed to soar again, carrying with it the echo of a promise kept by a little girl and the man who finally learned to listen. Autumn returned once again, and with it came the golden light that made the city shimmer like it had been brushed by hope itself. Leaves drifted down from the tall maples that lined the streets, painting the sidewalks in amber and gold. The Amara Program had just celebrated its 5th anniversary, and what had started as a single act of kindness now stretched across hundreds of schools and communities. Children who once went hungry now brought home stories of full plates and open hearts, and every one of them, in some quiet way, carried the legacy of a little girl who had refused to give up her dignity. On a crisp Saturday morning, William Grant stood outside the Silver Spoon Café, the same place where everything always seemed to come full circle. The café was busier than ever, filled with laughter, music, and the smell of freshly baked bread. The words painted above the door had faded slightly from the years, but they still read clearly, "No one leaves hungry." Inside, Evelyn was decorating a corkboard filled with photos from the anniversary celebration. She smiled when she saw William enter. "You are early," she said. "I could not stay away," he replied, smiling. "This place feels more like home than my own office." "That is because it is alive," she said warmly. "It has heart. And that heart is standing behind you," he said, nodding toward Amara. She was now almost a teenager, taller and more confident, her lavender ribbon replaced with one the color of sunrise. She was helping a group of children color paper lunchboxes for a school project called Kindness Travels. Each lunchbox had a message written on it. "Be kind today. Someone needs it." When she noticed William, she waved and ran to him. "Mr. William," she said cheerfully, "guess what? We sent 200 kindness lunchboxes to different schools this month." 200? He said, impressed. "That is amazing, Amara. And every one of them had a note," she said proudly. Some kids wrote about sharing their lunches. Some said they wanted to be friends with kids who sit alone. "You are changing the world again," he said softly. "No," she said, shaking her head. "We are." Evelyn joined them, laughing softly. "She has been working on that project day and night. I think she inherited your stubbornness." "She inherited your strength," William said with a smile, "and your faith." A bell chimed as the cafe door opened, and a young boy walked in shyly, carrying a worn backpack. He looked around nervously before speaking. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "I heard this is where you can eat, even if you do not have money." Amara's face softened immediately. "Yes, it is," she said gently. "Come sit here. What would you like?" "Just soup," the boy said. "For me and my little sister. She is outside waiting." Amara turned to her mother. "Mama, can I?" "Go," Evelyn said with a nod. "You know what to do." Amara hurried to the counter, filled 2 bowls with steaming soup, and carried them to the table. "You can bring her inside," she said to the boy. "It is warm here." A few minutes later, the boy returned with a small girl who could not have been older than 6. Her coat was too big, and her hair was messy, but when Amara smiled at her, the little girl smiled back. "Hi," Amara said kindly. "I am Amara. What is your name?" "Ellie," the girl whispered. "That is a beautiful name," Amara said. "This is for you." She placed a warm bowl of soup in front of her and slipped a folded napkin beside it. On the napkin were the words, "You are not invisible." William watched from across the room, his chest tightening with emotion. The scene was like a reflection of the past, a mirror of what once was but now rewritten with grace and healing. Evelyn stood beside him, her eyes misting. "She has your heart," she said quietly. "No," William said softly. "She has her own, but she reminded me how to use mine." When the boy and his sister finished eating, They both stood and thanked Amara shyly. "Can we come back?" the little girl asked. "Anytime," Amara said warmly. "And next time, you can help me serve." The siblings left with smiles that seemed to brighten the entire room. For a long moment, silence hung in the air, heavy with something beautiful and wordless. Finally, Amara walked back to William. "Did I do good?" she asked. "You did perfect," he said, his voice thick. "You did what the world needs more of." "Mama says the world is just waiting for someone to go first," she said. "You went first, Mr. William." "No," he said softly, kneeling so his eyes met hers. "You did." The afternoon sunlight poured through the cafe windows then, catching the silver charm around her neck, the tiny lunchbox that had started it all. Its glow seemed to fill the room, spilling across the faces of everyone there. Later, as the cafe closed and the last customers left, William lingered by the door, watching the street outside. Leaves drifted across the sidewalk like small golden messengers. Evelyn turned off the lights one by one, and Amara swept the floor, humming softly. William smiled, feeling something rare and steady inside him, a peace that came only when one's life had finally made sense. The world outside was still imperfect, but in this small corner of it, kindness ruled. And as he stepped into the fading light, he whispered to himself, "This is what it means to live." The echo of that truth seemed to follow him down the street, carried by the wind, as the silver lunchbox continued to shine quietly inside the cafe, a symbol of hope that would never fade. Winter came quietly that year, laying a soft blanket of snow over the city. The air was crisp and clean, and the lights along the streets glowed like scattered stars. Inside the Silver Spoon Café, warmth filled every corner. A fire crackled in the small brick fireplace, and the smell of hot cocoa and cinnamon drifted through the air. It had been nearly 6 years since that day in the school cafeteria, the day when a small voice had said, "They threw my lunch in the trash again." What had begun in heartbreak had become a story the whole city knew. For William Grant, it was more than a memory, it was his life's purpose. On this particular evening, he sat by the window, a cup of tea in hand, watching snowflakes spiral past the glass. Evelyn was closing the register, and Amara, now nearly 15, was helping a group of younger volunteers pack food boxes for the homeless shelter across town. Her laughter was softer now, more mature, but it carried the same light that had once melted the cold from his heart. "You look proud," Evelyn said, sitting across from him. "I am," he said quietly, "more than I can ever say." "You know she looks up to you," Evelyn said. "You are her hero." William smiled faintly. "She has it backwards. She is mine." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, listening to the murmur of voices and the gentle scrape of chairs. "Do you ever think about how far this has come?" Evelyn asked softly. "Sometimes it feels unreal." "It is real," he said. "Every meal, every smile, every life touched it is all real. And it all started because one little girl refused to stay invisible." Evelyn's eyes softened. "You gave her a voice." "No," he said, shaking his head. "She gave me one." Across the room, Amara was giving instructions to 2 younger children, showing them how to fold the donation boxes neatly. "You have to press down the corners," she said, demonstrating patiently. "That way they hold together." The little boy beside her looked up and said, "Why do you do this every week?" Amara smiled. "Because someone once helped me. Now I want to help someone else." The boy nodded solemnly, as if understanding something much larger than himself. William watched the exchange with quiet awe. "She is going to change the world," Evelyn whispered. "She already has," William said softly. As the night grew later, the cafe emptied until only the 3 of them remained. Amara wiped her hands on a towel and joined them at the table. "Everything is ready for tomorrow," she said. 50 boxes, all labeled and sealed. "You did a wonderful job," Evelyn said. "Your heart has grown so big, I am surprised it still fits inside you." Amara laughed, resting her chin on her hands. "I just think everyone deserves to feel full. Not just in their stomachs, but in their hearts too." William nodded thoughtfully. "That is the kind of fullness the world forgets to measure," he said. "And you keep reminding it." She tilted her head, curious. "Mr. William, do you think the world will ever stop needing programs like ours?" He looked at her with gentle eyes. "Maybe not. But that is not a bad thing. It means there will always be a reason for kindness to keep going, and there will always be people like you to carry it forward. Amara smiled, her eyes bright. Then I will keep carrying it, I promise. The clock chimed softly in the background. Evelyn stood and stretched. It is getting late. We should lock up. As she moved to the door, Amara lingered beside William. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Of course. Do you ever miss who you were before you met us? She asked. He thought for a long moment before answering. Sometimes, he admitted, but only because I realize how lost I was. I had everything, but I was empty. Then you came along and showed me what real wealth looks like. What does it look like? She asked, smiling. It looks like this, he said, gesturing around the cafe. It looks like laughter and courage and second chances. Amara leaned forward, resting her arms on the table. Then I guess we are all rich, she said. The richest people I know, he agreed. Outside, the snow continued to fall, quiet and endless. The lights from the cafe glowed against the windows, turning the street into a scene that looked like it belonged in a storybook. Before leaving, William took the silver lunchbox charm from his pocket and set it on the counter beside the register. What are you doing? Evelyn asked softly. Leaving it here, he said, where it belongs. This cafe, this family, this is its home now. Amara picked it up gently, her fingers tracing the engraving. Kindness is forever, she read aloud. It really is, isn't it? It is, William said. And you are the proof. They locked the doors and stepped outside together, their breath visible in the cold night air. The city was silent except for the distant sound of bells. Amara looked up at the sky, snowflakes landing in her hair. Mr. William, she said, I think kindness is like snow. It falls quietly, but it covers everything. William smiled, his eyes glistening. And when it melts, he said, it helps things grow. They walked together down the snowy street, their footprints side by side, fading slowly behind them. Inside the darkened cafe, the silver charm caught the last flicker of the firelight and shimmered like a tiny star, a reminder that even the smallest acts can light the world forever. Years passed gently, carrying with them the rhythm of change, the pulse of time, and the soft echo of kindness that never faded. The city had grown brighter, not just in its lights but in its spirit. The Amara Program had expanded to every state, with schools and shelters named after the girl who once carried a silver lunchbox and refused to let the world forget her worth. The Silver Spoon Café remained the heart of it all, a place where stories and souls met, where every meal told a tale of second chances. William Grant was older now, his hair silver like the box that had once sat on his desk, but his eyes still carried that steady light that only gratitude can give. One sunny morning, he returned to the cafe after several months away. The air smelled of coffee and fresh bread, and the familiar bell above the door chimed softly as he entered. Evelyn stood behind the counter, arranging flowers in a glass jar. She looked up and smiled warmly. William, she said, her voice filled with genuine affection. I was beginning to think you had forgotten about us. Never, he said, smiling. I just needed time to think, to write something. Write something? She asked. A book, he said, about the journey, about all of this. Her eyes softened. You finally did it. I finally did, he said quietly. And it is not about me. It is about her. He looked toward the back of the cafe, where Amara, now 17, was sitting with a group of children, helping them with their homework. She had grown into herself beautifully, poised yet humble, her laughter still carrying the same warmth it always had. When she saw him, her face lit up. Mr. William, she exclaimed, rushing over to hug him. You came back. Of course, he said, smiling. I wanted to see how my favorite author was doing. She blushed. You heard about the essay contest? Heard about it, he said, pretending to sound offended. I helped fund it, and you won, did you not? I did, she said proudly. They are going to publish my piece in the National Youth Journal next month. You see, he said softly, the world keeps listening to your voice. Evelyn joined them at the table with 3 cups of tea. Tell him the title, sweetheart, she said. Amara smiled shyly. It is called The Day Kindness Spoke. It is about how one small act can echo forever. I wrote about you and Mama. And about the lunchbox. Of course you did, he said warmly. That lunchbox started a revolution. Amara reached into her bag and pulled out a new silver lunchbox, freshly polished, its surface engraved with words in her own handwriting. Carry kindness forward. She placed it in front of him. This one is for you, she said. It is empty on purpose, so you can decide what to fill it with next. For a moment, William could not speak. He placed a hand gently over the lunchbox, feeling the cool metal against his skin. You have no idea what this means to me, he said softly. Oh, I think I do, she said with a knowing smile. You taught me that small things can change big hearts, he laughed quietly, and you proved me right. They sat together for hours, talking, laughing, remembering. When the afternoon light began to fade, Evelyn lit the candles on each table, their flickering glow casting golden reflections across the room. The cafe was quiet now, the last customers gone, leaving behind only the smell of sugar and the sound of soft music from an old radio. The foundation is hosting a 10-year gala next month, William said suddenly. I want you both there. You are the heart of this story. Only if you promise to read something from your book, Evelyn said. I might, he said, smiling. But only if Amara reads hers too. Amara's eyes widened. You mean, together? Exactly, he said. Full circle. She grinned. Deal. That night, when William returned to his office, he placed the new lunchbox beside the old one on his desk. The two gleamed in the lamplight, one slightly dented and worn from the past, the other shining and full of new beginnings. He opened his notebook and began to write the final chapter of his book. His pen moved slowly, deliberately, as he wrote, Kindness is not a story that ends. It is a language the heart never forgets. It lives in the hands that serve, the voices that speak for others, and the courage of those who dare to care. The next month, at the Foundation's gala, the room was filled with people whose lives had been changed by the program. William stood at the podium, reading those very words aloud, his voice steady but full of emotion. When he finished, the audience rose to their feet in applause. He stepped aside and gestured toward Amara. She walked up gracefully, holding her essay in one hand and the new silver lunchbox in the other. This box was once just a place to keep my food, she began. But now, I think of it as a place that keeps my heart. Because what you give from the heart never really leaves, it travels, it grows, it finds new homes in other hearts. The room was silent, many eyes glistening with tears. She smiled softly, looking toward William and her mother. This story is not about being saved. It is about remembering that everyone has something to give even when it feels like the world is not looking. The applause that followed was like a wave, warm and endless. Later that night, as the crowd dispersed and the lights dimmed, William stepped outside into the cool evening air. The stars shimmered above, and the city below glowed softly like a promise kept. Amara joined him, standing beside him in silence. Do you think it will last? She asked quietly. Kindness? He said. It already has. She smiled, and together they looked out at the city that had once been divided by indifference and now stood united by compassion. Somewhere far below, the cafe lights flickered, and the reflection of two silver lunchboxes gleamed like twin stars in the window. For William Grant, it was the perfect ending, and for the world, it was only the beginning.